Great. Okay. So as I mentioned, as some of you were entering our session today, this is part of a 3-part series from class to career, the job search process. And today's session will focus on how to effectively market yourself for career success. Next week, we will focus on building your network using LinkedIn and the Alumni Mentor Network. So that will be next week's session, and you would need to register for that session as well. Hopefully you'll join us. And then the following week, we will wrap up the 3-part series with essential job search tools and preparing for the interview. But you are welcome to email me or put something in the chat. So if there's a topic we're not necessarily scheduled to cover, but it's something you'd like some more information about, I am happy to customize these sessions to make sure that your questions are being addressed. So let's get started today with something that I think is really helpful for all students and recent graduates to be aware of. So career readiness, and of course, as a career counselor or career coach, I love to talk about career readiness, but career readiness is the foundation upon which a successful career is launched. So it's important to think about that throughout your college experience, you're developing important skills that can prepare you for the transition to the professional world. So whatever it is that you want to pursue, whatever industry or career that you're looking to pursue, or maybe at this point you're just exploring, career readiness and being prepared is key. So what employers are looking for when we talk about being career ready is that the student or graduate knows what they want and how to apply their skills and talents and interests to the current job market. And so what the National Association of Colleges and Employers, also known as NACE, did was they surveyed hundreds and hundreds of employers and colleges and identified 8 key competencies that employers are looking for in new graduates. And these 8 competencies, these 8 career competencies can be demonstrated in a variety of ways. There's no one way to show that you have communication skills or that you can demonstrate your professionalism. You can really demonstrate these competencies in a number of different ways. And so I'm going to read through them, and we can talk about the ones, a few of them in a little more depth. So showing that you have a career and self-development competency means that you're aware of your own strengths and weaknesses, and that you are networking to build relationships, and college is a wonderful place to start. So, in college, it's a phenomenal time for self-exploration, and we'll talk a little bit more about skill building in a moment, and knowing yourself really well, because that's what's going to be helpful to you as you look to pitch or apply for certain jobs, is how well you know your own strengths and skill sets. It's also key, of course, to know how to communicate. So both your oral and written communication skills are highly valued to employers, as well as critical thinking skills, equity and inclusion, leadership, professionalism, teamwork. I can't say enough about teamwork. In most organizations, you're going to be asked to work as part of a team. It most likely would not be a solo effort. So important to think about, how are you building teamwork skills at Purchase College? Are you asked to participate in group projects? Are you joining associations and clubs while you're at Purchase? All terrific ways to work as part of a team. And then, of course, technology. So there's an understanding that when you graduate from college, that you have developed some technological skills and that you can leverage these skills to complete a variety of different tasks that employers are looking for you to do. Questions about the career competencies? Okay. So as I said, we're going to talk a little bit more about skill building. So helpful to really understand what your current skill sets are and also understand which ones you might want to hone or develop further. So identifying what skills you possess and then any gaps in your skill sets. So maybe, you haven't had a chance to further develop your communication skills yet at purchase, and maybe you want to take a communications class, or you want to take the opportunity to present in front of the class to hone those presentation skills. Lots of different ways to further develop your communication skills or any skill set at Purchase College. And so knowing these skills that you want to learn or develop is really key. And then seeking out resources in order to develop those skills. So, meeting with a career counselor can help you. So if you say, I really want to develop my leadership skills, if we'd be happy, any of us in the Career Development Center would be happy to brainstorm different ways in which you can develop your leadership skills. And then creating samples of your work using that new skill, that's always very helpful. So whether you're going to include a writing sample maybe on your LinkedIn profile, or you are going to include a link to a presentation or some creative work that you've done, all of that, maybe you're a graphic designer. So anything that you can point to that demonstrates your skill is wonderful to include on LinkedIn, or sometimes you can include a link on your resume itself. Another way, and this is, I'd say a fairly new way, maybe it became more popular in the last couple of years through the pandemic, are students and recent graduates taking on micro internships to develop and build skills. So micro internships is a short-term, sometimes they're paid and sometimes they're unpaid. So I see my slide says they're paid. Sometimes they're unpaid, but they're opportunities to take on an assignment that would be similar to an assignment or a project given to a new hire or an intern. So here are a variety of sites that are targeted towards students and new grads that allow you to search and engage with employers that are looking for you to perform what's called a micro internship. And a micro internship is different than a traditional internship in that they can take place year round. They typically range from 5 to 40 hours of work, and they're typically due between 1 week and 1 month after kickoff. So after you take on the micro internship, your due date would usually be about a week to a month after you've begun. So here are different sites that you can look into that offer these micro internships. So it's a great way if you are looking to build a new skill or competency, and it's also a great way. So if you find that there is that skill gap, it's a wonderful way to demonstrate and build that proficiency in that skill that perhaps you need some bolstering. So Way Up is a site where you would complete an online profile, and it would match you with employers based on your own interest and experience. And this site in particular has over 3.5 million users and 300,000 participating employers. And my statistic shows that 33% of employers are hiring virtual interns. Parker Dewey, the employers on Parker Dewey are coming from a variety of industries and disciplines. You can explore different roles within these organizations, and assignments could range anywhere from marketing, such as copywriting and working in social media, or sales projects, operation tasks, and so on. Now, Catch a Fire is short-term unpaid project work. And what's great about Catch a Fire is that you would be performing this unpaid work for nonprofits. So anyone who has an interest in working for a nonprofit and building skills and competencies there. So Catch a Fire might be a website to check out. Forage is also, all of these websites should be free. So you should not be paying to do a micro internship. In some cases you will be paid, and sometimes you will not be paid for the project, but you should not be paying to do this project work. And Forage is free, again, as all of them should be, and you would be performing virtual, work for top companies. So, a variety of sites to check out. Questions about micro internships or anything that I've covered thus far? Okay. So I think, do I have anyone on from the Career Development Center monitoring the chat for me?
Yeah, I'm here. There's no questions in the chat just yet.
Awesome, thank you. So I know we have Emily Hansen, and then we have Emily Delinsky. So Emily Delinsky is the Emily who will be monitoring my chat. I didn't want you to think, Emily Hansen, that you were getting an additional job today. All right, moving right along. Let's talk about self-marketing. One of the reasons, one of the hot topics for this workshop today. So I always suggest to students and alums that before they even get started on their resume or cover letter, it's really important to think about branding. Or self-marketing or branding. And when you think about branding in particular, sometimes you think about different organizations that have a reputation that you think of when you hear their name. So if you hear of Nike, right, or you hear, let's use Nike as an example. Can anyone share, when they hear the organization's name Nike, sort of what comes to mind?
Sneakers.
Sneakers, for sure. Absolutely.
Yeah, Emily Hansen wrote in the chat the "Just Do It" slogan.
Absolutely. They do a really good job of marketing themselves using their slogan, right? Just do it. I would also think, sometimes when I think of Nike as a brand, I think of their swoosh, right? So they've done some really impressive branding, because all of these images, sneakers and Just Do It and their swoosh, would come to mind. And a personal brand is very similar to a corporate brand. It's who you are, what you stand for, and your values. So just as a company's brand helps to communicate its value to customers and helps them to stand out from the competition, a personal brand does the same thing for individuals. It can help you communicate your unique identity and your value to potential employers. So what I would like you to do is just spend some time thinking about what you do better than anyone else. What are you naturally good at? What have you accomplished so far? What are you passionate about? And sometimes for individuals, this can be a challenging task, and one that I'm not expecting you'll do in this session today, but one that hopefully I'm giving you some questions to ponder after today's workshop. So if you're finding it difficult to analyze yourself, right, you can ask your friends or relatives for some help. Ask them to describe your best qualities. Ask them what they would think of as your greatest achievements so far. Another great way to think about what you're enthusiastic or passionate about, or your own skills and strengths, is to take the focus to self-assessment. That can really help you identify what your preferences are as well. And we talked about skills and strengths and different ways to build them so far. And then really thinking about what your goal is. Where would you want to be using your strengths and your skill set? So who are you targeting? Who is your audience? Who is the employer that you wish to work for? Who is that customer you're targeting? And what are the needs of this customer or this employer? What are they looking for? What key skills or competencies are important to them? Anyone want to venture a guess where you find out what an employer might be looking for? What key skills or competencies that employer might be looking for? Where would you find this information?
I mean, you can find it in the job description and the objective.
Absolutely, Debbie. Yes, that job description is really the best place to start. They usually will give you a list of qualifications or skills that they're looking for in a potential employee or in a job candidate. Absolutely. So you want to think about, when you read that job description, what problem does this employer need solved? How can you help them? What are these hiring managers looking for in a candidate? And something else that a career coach can be really helpful at is helping you identify all those keywords and skills that they use in the job postings, and then helping you to utilize those keywords in your self-marketing materials, in your resume, in your cover letter, on your online profiles, so that it makes it very easy for this potential employer to know that you'd be a good fit. So once you're developing these marketing materials, just as a company needs their marketing materials, their materials to help them brand themselves, so do you. And across all of these, your cover letter, your resume, your outgoing voicemail message, your online social media profiles, you want to show that you're consistent. You want to be professional and consistent across each of these mediums, because they help you reinforce the brand that you want to present to potential employers. So when you think about, I guess one of the most important marketing materials is your resume. So we're going to spend the next few slides talking about your resume as a self-marketing tool. When you are looking to customize your resume, and you might need to do this for each job that you apply for, right? So a resume might not be a one size fits all if you're applying to jobs in different industries. You'll want to customize your resume for each position that you're applying for. And just like Debbie said, you will find a ton of information in that job posting or listing. You can also find a lot of information about a company through their website and their profiles, their social media channels. So if they are on Instagram, Twitter, however they, if they're sort of in the news media, you want to follow them. Most organizations have a presence on LinkedIn, so that's a great place to see how a company is marketing itself and seeing what its needs are. So you want to do this research. It's usually very easy to do about companies nowadays because all of it is online. You want to review that job description or posting thoroughly, read it a number of times, maybe highlight those keywords or skills. And then you want to create these customized versions of your resume based on the job you're applying for. You're going to modify that resume. So you might start with a resume. Sometimes I call it a master document resume. So that document might have everything you've ever done on it. And that might be multiple pages, right? So that's okay. And then when you're looking to customize that resume because you're pursuing a particular job or career path, you want to highlight everything on a one-page resume from that master document. So I usually recommend that students and alums, sort of do a save as, and they save their master document resume and then maybe cut or paste or make some changes in order to tailor it for that job opening. On this resume, you want to be sure to include any projects that you completed while at Purchase, any leadership roles that you have held, any volunteer or community work. A lot of times students and alums do volunteer work outside of college. Maybe they're passionate about helping, animals, or maybe they have helped at their local, church or synagogue. So anytime you've been involved in volunteer work, that's also something that can be included on a resume or a LinkedIn profile. Questions? I didn't mention this, but I would be very happy to send all of our participants today the slides. So I know I have a lot of content here, and I'm taking your questions as you go, but you rest assured I will send you this PowerPoint presentation. And as I did mention, yes, absolutely, it's being recorded. So should you want to rewatch it, that will be an option as well. Okay, so tips about your resume. A resume, of course, is a document that highlights your skills, your education, your goals, and your experience. And producing a good resume and a well-written cover letter is a basic requirement nowadays for a successful job search. So these documents play a critical role in helping employers understand who you are, what motivates you, what your goals are, and what you have to offer as a potential employee. So here are some tips, right? As I mentioned in the last slide, you might have a master document resume that goes onto multiple pages. But when you're sending it to an employer, I'm going to recommend that you keep it to one page, unless it's a specific industry where they are looking for a CV. But you can always chat with any of us, any of the career coaches, and we can help you sort of make the determination. One of the main reasons that career coaches suggest that you keep a resume to one page is because we'd like to suggest you make a positive impression in 30 seconds or less, meaning that potential employers are only taking seconds to read your resume. So they might not flip to a page two. They might not scan, and if your font is super, super small, they might not be able to read it. So let us help you highlight the skills and experiences for a job listing. We can help you to tailor your resume. On this one-page document, you want to avoid using personal pronouns. So you can use I or you or she, he, they in a cover letter. But on a resume, you want to avoid using pronouns. You want to start all of your bullet point statements, and we'll talk a little bit more about bullet point statements in a moment, with an action verb. So here are a few, but we have a wonderful resource, and maybe Emily can put that in the chat as well, our resume and self-marketing guide, so that you can refer to it. We have a whole page of action verbs. You can also, of course, Google them. But you want to start your bullet point statement with an action verb. You want to choose a common font and font size through your document. So we often recommend that you put your name sort of in a larger font, but all of your headings should be in the same size font, in the same, whether you're using Times New Roman or Calibri, whatever it is, you want to be consistent throughout your document. Margins. So margins around the page, you can really stick with a 1/2 inch to a full inch. So if you need the room, of course, a 1/2 inch around the page would work well. And that really allows you to sort of maximize space. You're going to use a clean layout. I am not a fan of templates, so I don't mind telling our participants today that I am not one to recommend a template. So I know Google Docs has them, Word has them. You can probably Google and have them and use them. But what happens when you use a template are a couple things. One, it doesn't make it easy for you to customize and tailor it. Often they have specific categories they want you to use. They have placement. If your section goes over sort of the room that they've allotted for a section, it's really hard to manipulate it. So I encourage you to use a blank Google Doc or blank Word doc. I'm drawing a blank now of the other software that students often use. Emily D, is it Canva? I think it is.
Yeah, we use Canva for like brochures and stuff, but it could also be used for resumes.
Absolutely. So Canva, it might be another option for you as well. But I tend to use, Word, and I have no problem sort of updating it and tailoring it, as I want to add new experiences to my resume. You want to, of course, proofread your resume many times. If a potential employer sees a spelling or grammatical error on your resume, that could knock you out of the running right off the bat. So you want to make sure that you either play a careful, you use a careful eye, you have someone else look at it, a friend or a career coach. You can certainly try and use Grammarly or use your spell check, of course, but Grammarly might be challenging because you're using bullet point statements and those are not full sentences. So just, utilizing different resources to make sure that your resume is free of any spelling or grammatical errors. You want to quantify whenever possible on your resume and your bullet point statements. We'll talk about that more in a moment, but quantifying using numbers really shows results. It really gives leaves an impression of what you did, how much impact you might have had, and shows results. So those of you sort of finishing up purchase, don't forget to include your senior project on your resume or any other academic or personal projects that you've taken on. If they demonstrate a skill or a competency, you'll want to include that on your resume. So questions?
This is Debbie. I've got a question. Actually, I've been out of work for a while, but because I've been out of school for a while. But anyway, so I've been taught too that to do the resume in a PDF, so when you go to upload it and send it over, it doesn't get all scrambled, or should I really be doing it in a Word? Does that make sense?
It really does, Debbie. Thank you so much for that question. And what a great question. So when you're creating the resume, I would encourage you to create it in Word or Google Docs or Canva. And then you're absolutely right. You want to save it as a PDF. So and it makes it very easy to do that. So you just want to do a save as and save it as a PDF before sending that or uploading it to an employer's website if you're applying there, or if you're applying through Purchase Job Score, or if you're sending it as an email attachment, because you're absolutely right. Sometimes when you use Word or Google Docs, the formatting can shift when it's sent online or through an email. So you want to make sure if you send it as a PDF, it maintains the integrity of your document. Did that address your question?
Yes, it did very much. Thank you.
Sure. Other questions? Okay. Have all of you had an opportunity to draft a resume before? Yeah. Okay. Has anyone had a career coach look over this resume and provide feedback? I'm going to encourage you to do that. It's such a great resource. The Career Development Center is only too happy to have a one-on-one, session with you so that we can talk about your individual needs. I mean, I think it's fantastic that you're attending a group workshop today. I'm all for it, but sometimes you have some questions about your own situation, or you might have questions about your own resume and other self-marketing materials. So look to us for some feedback and suggestions so that we can help you customize your resume. I would say when I have one-on-one sessions with students, the question that comes up most often pertains to bullet point statements, because, unless you have a lot of experience writing bullet point statements, it can sometimes be challenging to learn how to do it effectively. And because we talk about using that one-page resume as a self-marketing tool and making sure that it's highlighting all your skills and experiences, you'll want to be sure that your bullet point statements are helping you to do that and reach that goal of getting across what it is you want to share with a potential employer. So I take students through this exercise to help them create bullet point statements. And I'm hoping that maybe I can have some of you share some of the examples today of bullet point statements that, that you've used, or one that maybe you're trying to write and need some help with. So think about that as I talk you through some strategies. So when you're thinking about bullet point statements, you want to think about every one of your experiences, but not just using the bullet point statement to state what responsibilities you had. So think about a job that you've held, whether it was unpaid, paid, a project that you worked on, and think about the problem you faced. Think about the action you took and the results you achieved. You want to make sure that your bullet point statement is telling a full story, and you want it to demonstrate the value you added to your work. So in order to do this, you might first want to brainstorm a list of all the tasks and responsibilities you held at that experience. How did you do it? What skills did you use? And you want to think about, of course, those keywords again. What would be valuable in this position? What are they looking for? What would be relevant to the position you're applying for? And then why did you do it? So it's great to say that you helped customers, right? So helping, you could say, Lauren, you said start with an action verb. Help is an action verb. And I'm telling you who I helped customers. But what do you think? Is that enough to just say helped customers? Probably not. You want to talk about why you did it, right? Or the end result of that transaction. Okay, so maybe you helped customers. Did you help them problem solve? Did you address their questions? Did you ensure, if you worked in food service, perhaps, did you ensure timely delivery of their order? Did you respond to questions? So you think about the end result And a lot of times when you're in a customer service role, I'll stick with that theme for a moment. Your goal, right, was to ensure a positive customer experience or interaction. So was there a way to talk about that as a result of your actions that you ensured a positive customer experience? That's just one example. We could come up with many more. And remember, I talked about citing numbers. So when you cite numbers or you quantify your results, it really helps to drive your point home. If you can talk about the number of people you supervised, if you were in a supervisory role, or if, let's say, you were a student teacher, or you were a tutor, or you worked for an after-school program or daycare, how many children in the classroom? How many children did you mentor? How many did you tutor? It really, or maybe you have been in a caregiver or a babysitting role. How many children did you supervise or oversee? What if you were someone who volunteered and or had a paid experience where you were in charge of events, right? Can you imagine the impact when you talk about the size of the event, maybe the number of people involved, or you were able to articulate the budget, right? You were specific about the budget that you were responsible for with that project. So those are ways to quantify your results. Okay, I would love an opportunity to have you all participate and practice. Would anyone care to share a bullet point statement that they either have written or would like some help writing?
I can give you one. This is Debbie again. Okay, dates list is when I worked at the Museum of Science, but let me see if I can read it, I think. So responsible for museum sales and selling tickets and membership using the Testatoria system, making proactively suggestions to guests to match guests' interests to the museum offerings. That was one boilerplate.
Great, Debbie. Thank you so much for sharing that. So after we've talked a little bit about the bullet point statements, what thoughts come to mind when you just read that to me?
Maybe I don't necessarily have an action verb at the beginning. Maybe.
Yes, I mean, you seem like you did a good job explaining what you did and why you did it. I think, and I see this a lot with resumes, Debbie, not just with your example, but many times we include responsible for. What if we brainstormed an action verb that you could use rather than responsible for? Can you think of something, or can somebody else want to jump in? And did they have an idea on about Debbie's example? Debbie, would it be accurate to say you managed museum sales?
Yes.
And what do you think of the difference by saying managed museum sales versus responsible for?
Well, manage is more of an action verb, I guess.
Yeah, I think so. That might be one suggestion that sort of comes to mind. What else might you think about doing? Is there a way for you to quantify in that bullet point statement? Maybe it's possible, maybe it's not.
I'm not totally sure. I mean, I was trying to say that I sold tickets and I used a certain computerized system to do it, and to make sure that I showed interest to the members the guests, I mean.
Mm-hmm. That's great. Do you happen to know over your time working for the museum if you increased sales?
I did, and you know what, I didn't use that in that one, at all, actually. I talked a little bit about how I handled a lot of cash and credit card transactions and I provided welcoming, but I did not say how much sales in general.
Yeah, and just something, just ideas I'm floating out, and maybe it works in for you. And it sounds like you really did cover a lot in that in those in that description and those bullet point statements, Debbie. And it sounds like you did a really nice job. If there's a way to talk about how you've increased sales, maybe there's a way for you to indicate a percentage increase. Or a way for you to include maybe the number of people, if it's sort of significant, how many guests you interacted with on a daily basis, anything that sort of, demonstrates results that you personally want to highlight. So we could go on and on, but I think you're off to a really good start there.
Thank you.
Great. Emily Hansen, did you want to mention a bullet point statement or have any questions about how to customize your resume?
No, I'm pretty good so far. Thanks.
Awesome. Great. Okay. So I do want to mention that that this Wednesday, April 27th, we have an upcoming program connecting on LinkedIn with Chaim Shapiro, who's a national speaker and trainer on LinkedIn. And that program will be held virtually from 1 to 2:30. And on the Purchase career development site, you can register for that upcoming event on Wednesday. And then, of course, I hope that you will join me next Monday, where we will also talk about using LinkedIn as a networking tool and how to use the alumni mentor network as well. We'll talk about the value of networking. We'll talk about informational interviews. We'll have a lot to cover. And then our third session will be focused on job interview success, how to prepare for job interviews, and how to engage in a successful job search. So we'll do that in our third week together.
And those are all in. I'm sorry.
Each one, yeah, thank you, Debbie. So each one will be on Monday from 2 to 3, just like today's was. So next week will be LinkedIn, and then the following week will be the topic will be job search and the job interview. And each one is held on Zoom. I'm sorry, did I say LinkedIn? Each one will be held on Zoom, and you just register for those on our website. And you can also, of course, email me or any of the folks in the Career Center your questions. So here's my email address. It's my first and last name, lauren.rosenkranz@purchase.edu. And of course, I will send you the slides from this session so that you can have them to refer back to. And what I will do now is stop the recording.